Hey, this is Shane with Storm Stanley, and I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes to take a look at some of the work that went into creating the visual effects of this Back to the Future themed commercial for Downstream Casino Resort. This is not going to be an in-depth tutorial, but rather more like a quick walkthrough, showing you some of the tips and tricks and shortcuts that we discovered to make what really should have been a 3 or 4 month project happen in closer to 2-3 weeks' time. As Dustin explained on our last video, this was a team effort, and we all had several different hats to wear to make this happen. Dustin, he's the Storm in Storm Stanley, shot all of this footage in 4K resolution. I believe he was using a Canon 5D Mark IV. Each individual frame weighed in at about 8.8 megabytes, I believe is what he kind of told me about. And that's a lot of data. Tons of pixels. Then we've got Matthew. He's the Stanley in Storm Stanley. He's pretty much an audio guru, and he put a ton of work into making sure that if something moved or made a noise or squiggle or whatever, you get to hear that. Myself, I was tasked with pretty much creating the visual effects like the 3D animation, compositing, motion graphics, and stuff like that. To begin with, we really took some time to look at the footage from the movies. We kind of broke it down, looked at how they, approached it, kind of seen how those effects could be recreated, pretty quickly, and while still being true to the source material. So this first shot right here, we wanted to establish the scene. It's pretty quiet. It's a static shot, and the DeLorean is basically re-entering our time from wherever Doc and Marty were at the current time. And let's take a look. All right, to kind of break that down a little bit, we have the DeLorean entering the frame right about here, and with the idea in the movies, when we first see the DeLorean coming back in time with a dog in it, you see these kind of ghostly looking effects, almost like we're seeing the fabric of time kind of ripped apart by this car. So what I did was we had a 3D model of the actual DeLorean, pretty authentic looking model, very, very detailed. And within Cinema 4D, use a rendering engine called Arnold, and created a material that kind of had this ghostly look to it. It was basically just a fractal noise that was animated and had an alpha channel on it so that you could actually see through where some of the darker areas were, and rendered that out as just a straight shot, tried to match the direction and motion of the actual car that was shot, and you can see it kind of 2 or 3 of them burst in pretty quickly, and then we see the actual car coming through. We just kind of rotoscoped some glowing effects, had a adjustment layer with just kind of an overlay of a little glow. We use a plug-in that kind of gives you a little bit more vibrance in the colors. It's actually called Color Vibrance. It's from Video Copilot, and it kind of dynamically gives you this glowing effect. We see here as it's entering that this area kind of bursts, and we see these tendrils of electricity kind of flying out everywhere. Basically what we did was I just took a gradient ramp right here, kind of animated the distance that it was going in with a wiggle expression, and had a glow on it. We've got another overlay effect that kind of affects the lighting on the ground to match what's going on here. We've got the sign over here You can barely notice it, it's pretty subtle, but you can see the light affecting that. And let me see if I can take you into After Effects and show you what that looks like. So we start off right about here. Get over here where there's some of the stuff going on. Got about 100 or so layers in here. Let's see if we can get to... We've got the lightning. Here's the ghost cars. We solo these layers and you can kind of see what's going on here. It is kind of dispersing in there pretty quickly. Matthew had some pretty cool effects sound wise when he got a hold of it. See if I can do a preview here. It's basically what that looks like. Just looks like a bunch of them just shooting through time. Then you add this ambient glow to the ground, and right here, kind of colored a little bit. We've got lightning. And we've got this glow right here. Kind of see this effect all together. And that's just overlaid on top of the footage. These lightning bolts are pretty interesting. Take a look at them. They're basically just a Bezier curve. And we've got an effect. It's actually another video Copilot effect called Saber. It's free. Download it off the website. And it's basically just for creating these tendrils of electricity that kind of animate over. Let's see if I can find one that you see kind of animates over here, and it's got this displacement effect on it that kind of gives it that really snappy electricity look. All right, let's see. From there, we go to these flames. These flames, originally I had planned on using a plugin within Cinema 4D that's kind of a fluid dynamic simulator. It's called Turbulent FD. Creates amazing fire and smoke, and it's kind of a liquid simulator. And just did not have the time. So what we did was went in here to After Effects and just kind of faked it. Let's see if I can find that composition. Got these tire marks. They're just a gray solid. Flame strip. There we go. All right. Lots of stuff going on here, but the meat of it happens right here. I mean, we've got all these kind of glowing effects going on here. This is just add that illusion of the ambient light coming from the flames, kind of flickering. These are just overlaid on some of these objects. Look, we have this tree here. We have the speed limit sign, kind of the ground and the curb. If you go in here and you solo this out, these are basically just two masks, or two white solids that are masked. And these masks are animated to follow the motion of the tires, and they animate in. Now, what those are doing is acting as a mat for these, which is just a fractal noise being animated. We animate the evolution property of those to kind of make it look like it's going upward and flowing. And then after that, we add some glowing effects in there. We've got this adjustment layer that has the color vibrance plug-in, which basically just boosts all those colors in that range. One thing to note is all of this is done at 32 bits per pixel, so we've got pretty much as much color control as you can get. Then we add this other solids. Well, no, those are unsolid these. So those, and we're missing something here. What's going on? Okay, I want to only select that one. Alright. And so, yeah, those are pretty fake, pretty cheesy, but they get the job done once you come back in here and look at it. You know, looks pretty realistic. Next thing we've got Marty in the car. That flux capacitor is pretty cool. The idea was thrown out here that, you know, it was always pretty cool in the Harry Potter movies when you see a newspaper and there's these moving images going on, and so we found a video footage of this Michael Jackson impersonator that is going to be at Downstream that night, and kind of tracked the camera, pinned the corners of it to that plane, and we've got some text animating here at the headline so you can kind of draw your attention to that text, and then it just animates off. Here, this is actually a shot that happened pretty late. Get back to it. This license plate isn't really there. Okay. Anyway, we've got the actual Back to the Future license plate is on there. They had this kind of cardboard mock-up of one that says Back to the 80s that they had taped on there. Well, it didn't look that realistic, so Dustin and I had decided to render out a 3D version of this that kind of has a bump map on it. Recreated the lighting from the car, and then I think Dustin and I kind of helped each other hand animate that just to give it that little bit more realism, you know. And I say that, but then I look at this and realize, well, we didn't add any screws, so hopefully nobody sees that. All right, coming up here, take a notice here. Marty has a very flat-looking hoverboard. We didn't have an actual hoverboard prop, so Barry and the team at Downstream had produced this kind of cardboard mock-up, and you'll see why I'm telling you this here in a second. But he's walking with that into the doorways. This lighting here did not exist inside the set. We didn't have this lighting. We did bring lighting, but we wanted this effect of looking like there's really a big party going on. And the problem with shooting at a casino like this is you can't just stop the casino traffic. People are in there, they're doing their thing, and you can't just tell everybody to stay out of your frame so you can film this. They're there to spend their money, and that would just be stupid to ask them to inconvenience themselves for us to do this. So this took a lot of effort to get this shot pulled off. But these lights are basically just adjustment layers with a gradient ramp thrown on there, and using that color vibrance plug-in to really make these colors pop. We kind of animate the opacity and the intensity of that with just some expressions that control how much of that effect is applied over a certain number of frames. And we just kind of have that making it look like we got the strobe lights going on and party stuff going on. Here we see these lasers. Those were not in the footage. We had to create those. Basically, I had created this complex rig using the saber effect that's going on with these lightning effects. I basically chained multiple of these together and used some expression controls and kind of, these sliders and point controls to kind of animate up and down. And, these lasers would fan out and, move up and down in a kind of uniform fashion. And then the colors were animated as well, just to make it look like there was a lot more going on in the background than there actually was. We kind of blurred out the footage so we could bring some attention to the graphics here on the screen. Barry wanted it to look like, this lightning was shooting on and actually adhering to the graphics, kind of give that effect. Got this film strip thing here, pretty basic. It's just footage placed inside these masks. Pretty standard stuff. Then right here we've got Marty leaving the casino. Pretty dramatic shot there. Looks pretty cool. Looks like he stole a bunch of money, but we see this flat looking skateboard again, or hoverboard. And here, that hoverboard has mysteriously become a real hoverboard. And this was something that was kind of a weird shot. I'll go into After Effects and show you the actual what's going on here. And so basically what we've got is this flat cardboard being tossed onto the ground. And then it just kind of sits there. And, we didn't have any option for shooting hoverboard, obviously. But kind of took some shortcut approaches here, and I decided it'd probably be the quickest to just mask this out because we didn't have a clean plate. So I masked out the skateboard, made it look more like a shadow, and then I rendered a 3D, or modeled, textured, and rendered a 3D hoverboard. And if we go over here to Cinema 4D, right, I'm on my laptop, so this may or may not happen. And it looks like it's going to be the may not. Nope, here we go. Basically, I pulled the footage into the background and just hand animated this to match the footage that we had taken at Downstream. And then the renderer engine that I use kind of smooths out all these polygons, and it's got a texture on it. I unfortunately don't have the textures on this machine right now, so I can't render a frame out and show you, but you can see this animation was kind of choppy, but I'm trying to match it up to the footage as best as I can. And then, we get this. I added a ton of motion blur to it and some kind of film grain to make it better integrate with the footage that we already had there. Let's see what happens next. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually jump on there, but it's kind of a given that that's what's going on. Here we have Marty actually hovering away on this hoverboard. What we did was we filmed him skating on our skateboard and then just rotoscoped the wheels out, animated a little masked out solid here for a shadow to kind of follow. He picks that up. And here's where the interesting stuff happens. You see this car. You see him getting in it. See the door going down. Fireworks just start popping off. What's interesting about this is this car's not really there. Well, we shot the car there, but the car had these blinding, just horrible white light coming out of the back of these thrusters here, and it was really kind of killing the shot for me personally. And I knew we were getting ready to do a 3D render of this scene, and so basically, we go in here. You see, this is a pretty detailed model of the DeLorean. Once again, I don't have any textures on here just because this is not synced up on my laptop. But we kind of matched the angle and setting of what was in the footage of where this car was. I textured it, lit it. We actually had taken some panoramic photos and HDRI images of this so we could get pretty accurate lighting and reflections going on the car. And basically had to mask out the actual car, but leave the door there, because if you take a look at this in 3D, those doors are part of the geometry. I can't move them. I mean, I probably could have taken the time to cut that out, but we just didn't have time for that. So just another shortcut we had to take to make sure this happened. So he gets in there, shuts the door, and we start to see this thing lift off the ground. You see the smoke popping out. You see the thrusting flames jetting out of the bottom of those wheels. Then this is pretty close to what was in the movie. I mean, I even went as far as to, I could have made the smoke more realistic, but I felt that it felt better and more accurate to the movie to not composite it in a realistic way, because in the movie it really just kind of looks like it's not actually smoke coming out of there. I mean, I tried to make it as realistic as I could, but leave enough of the cartoony nature of an 80s movie in the effect. And then we've got, when he takes off, got these kind of flares coming out of the back, matched up pretty well with the movie. We got the car that races around to the back. An interesting thing is that these fireworks came from Dustin and Matthew had shot some footage of a local baseball team called the Blasters, and one of their things at the stadium is every Friday, if it was a home game, they'd have fireworks displays. Well, they had some footage of this. They'd done a commercial spot for them previously, and we just reused that, doing it in the background because, Barry had mentioned, this is a New Year's Eve party. We don't have any fireworks. And we didn't have fireworks at shooting the footage, so we had to figure out something. And so Dustin threw that in there, and he actually had taken the time to kind of give a super subtle hint of color on the car and on the side of the tower here, just to kind of match that up. But you can barely see it, but it's enough there. Added a lot of motion blur after I rendered this out. The rendering of this took forever. I mean, same thing with the shooting of the footage. You've got thousands of frames, and each frame is, 8.5 megabytes each. Rendering out 4K footage out of Cinema 4D. I mean, we've got some pretty beefy computers, but this was still just chugging along. It took about 3.5 days to render just this final scene, and that's just the car. Take a look at here. I'll play this animation. And you can see it going up. Those lines are lights, directional lights. And so yeah, that's how we did that. Added a bunch of motion blur to kind of give it that realism. Comes around the corner, and then we kind of get some more of that, what the people that had done the special effects on the actual movies called this the time slice effect. Basically, it's just this blue ambient light with these electrical effects showing that the car's disappearing as it hits the camera. I mean, just right before it hits the camera, you can see it just disappears. We end off on these ending title card here. Dustin threw a bunch of these electrical effects in here, just kind of added to the whole vibe of the video. And that's a wrap. This project was a whole lot of fun. I learned a lot about expressions and how to programmatically make things happen in After Effects, and created a lot of time-saving shortcuts for myself. And going forward, I'm going to be able to be more productive and make things happen quicker in future projects, just because we had to have so many shortcuts and time savers to get this done as quick as we did. But that's pretty much about it. Thanks for watching, and make sure you share this video with your friends and family online. It's pretty amazing. Go out to Downstream New Year's Eve. It's going to be a pretty big party. Looks like it's going to be a blast. All right, thanks. Bye.